Hello, I'm going to do some critical thinking in the introduction lesson, and I'm going to show you 3 slides, and I want you to look at these slides, think of an answer in your head. So this is the first one. This is the second one. You may pause to read the choices carefully, and this is the third one. Now I'm going to go back and tell you what the right answers are. So in this first question, which says the stomach lies in the peritoneal cavity, the correct answer is false. The peritoneal cavity is a serous cavity, just like the pleural and the pericardial, and it only surrounds the organs. The organs do not lie in these serous cavities. So let's look at this one. So this is the peritoneal cavity. So this was the primitive peritoneal cavity, and here, let's say, is a developing stomach. What happens is that the stomach pushes into this cavity, so the cavity changes shape to accommodate it. So can you see that this is the stomach, this is the cavity, the peritoneal cavity. So when it changes shape, this remains the stomach, this part becomes visceral peritoneum, and this part becomes parietal peritoneum, and this is the cavity. So can you see that the organ is not lying in the cavity, instead it is surrounded by the cavity. The same holds true for the lungs and the heart. They do not lie in the pleural or pericardial cavities, they are only surrounded by them. These organs, however, do lie in the ventral body cavities, which are either the thoracic or the abdominopelvic. So the organs as well as the serous cavities lie in these ventral body cavities, but the serous cavities only surround the organs. Let's look at the next one. So here the question, read the question carefully. The question says, which of the following properties could a living cell do without? So the operative word is cell. Now all of these properties are properties of living organisms. However, cells form living organisms, but there is one property here which a living cell does not need in order to be called living. However, that property is a property of living organisms, because I said all of these are properties of living organisms. The question is asking you what is the property which a cell cannot do without, and the correct answer is reproduce. The reason being, all living cells respire because they take in oxygen, give out carbon dioxide, and in the process, and that's how the living organism survives. All living cells excrete because as they metabolize the various nutrients which go into the body, waste products are formed, and those are removed from the body. So they're removed by the cell and then finally out of the body. All living cells metabolize. All living cells also respond to stimuli and irritability. However, all living cells do not need to reproduce. While an organism needs to reproduce, every living cell does not need to reproduce, because red blood cells don't have a nucleus, so they don't reproduce, yet they are living because they do all of the others. Then you have muscle and nerve cells. They have lost the property of reproduction, so they do not regenerate. So these also are living, and but they do all of the others. So therefore, you have to read the question very, very carefully. It was asking about the cell and not the organism, and hence the correct answer was reproduce. Let's look at the third question here, which says, sections across transverse and horizontal planes are the same in which of the following structures in the body? By reading this question itself, you know that means that sections across transverse and horizontal planes, or transverse and horizontal planes, or transverse and horizontal sections are not the same, because it's giving you a choice here. They're not the same in all parts of the body. So let's see what the correct answer is. And for this, you must know the definitions of transverse and horizontal sections. Transverse sections are sections which are perpendicular to the long axis. So if the long axis is this way, the transverse section will be perpendicular. It will go across this way. If the long axis is this way, the transverse section is perpendicular, so it will be this way. So you can see in this, it is dividing a structure into an upper and a lower part. In this, it is dividing a structure into a right and a left part. a horizontal section always goes from front to back. So a horizontal section is always taken. So let's say you're looking at the body from the side. So let's say this is the front or anterior and this is the posterior. As you take a horizontal section or a horizontal plane, a section across a horizontal plane, it'll go from front to back. So go across like this, dividing it into an upper and a lower portion always. So now let's look at what happens in these three structural areas. So if we look at a rib lies horizontally across the body. So I'm just going to draw a rib this way. So this way. So you can, so I'm just drawing a part of the rib. So you can see its long axis is this way. And therefore a transverse section will go across this way. And it will divide the rib into two parts in this fashion. And this is something which I've drawn in your dissection post, so you should be able to see that. So this is a transverse section. A horizontal section in the case of the same rib, remember a horizontal section always goes from front to back, so you take this going across the rib this way, so it will divide it into an upper and a lower portion. So you can see in a rib, a transverse and a horizontal are not the same. Let's look at the pancreas. The pancreas are very similar to the ribs. The pancreas lie horizontally across the body, and again this is something which is given in your PowerPoint slide. So its long axis is this way. So a transverse section will divide it here. So it will divide it into two parts. A horizontal section on the other hand, so again if you show it this way, a horizontal section will go from front to back and divide it into an upper and a lower portion. So you can see they are different. Let's look at the trunk. So the trunk is this way. Its long axis is this, the length. A transverse section will go across this way and it will divide it into an upper and a lower portion. A horizontal section also will, remember it's going from front to back, so when it goes from front to back, it again will divide it into an upper and a lower portion. So in the case of the trunk, the sections, the transverse and horizontal sections or the transverse and horizontal planes are the same, but they are not in the case of a rib or the pancreas or any structure which lies horizontally across the body. So whenever you get questions like this, you must think very carefully, read the question carefully and look at the choices and think of the best answer possible and choose that one.